Hi everyone, how you going? I'll just give this a couple of minutes to catch up so that it can do its notification ding. So I'll just wait for a few people to come on and then we'll get stuck into this question that I'm asking. It's a bit off topic for this page, but I want to put the question to the people on this page. Okay, let me see. We've got a couple of people coming on. So, give it a couple more. We've got 9 people, 12 people. We've got a few people coming on. Hello, everybody. So, we're going to go back in history a little bit here, and I'll give you a bit of a backstory as to why I'm beginning to think that my daughter is being targeted due to my activism because of what she's had to go through in the last 3 years in order to get her youth allowance claim stabilised. So back when my daughter turned 18, I did the correct and responsible thing, was to go in and cancel family tax benefit payments for my daughter, A and B, and which the Centrelink staff found very strange that a parent would be doing that. But I didn't want to get an overpayment. My daughter had just completed her diploma, so she was no longer studying. And she didn't have a job, so therefore she had turned 18. She wasn't in study and she wasn't in work, so I wasn't entitled to the family tax benefit. And she was to then apply for her own youth allowance. Now, you'd think that wouldn't be an issue with an 18-year-old living 4 hours away from home in Brisbane, but it was a big issue. So she tried to put in an application for youth allowance, got completely dicked around. Basically, one of the times that she put an application in and she was refused on the grounds that she didn't upload the correct documentation. One of the documents that she was actually asked for, she was asked to provide a document stating that she'd never lived in state care. How can you upload a document that does not exist when you have not lived in state care? So how do you get a document to prove that you haven't? It doesn't exist. So there was a refusal on youth allowance on that. Over the course of the next 18 months, my daughter went without youth allowance. It put myself and her father under a lot of pressure because she couldn't come home either. She was also going through a lot of health issues herself, which caused complications. So in October 2019, after being denied I think 2 times, which time my daughter is almost 19 and a half, right? Bear in mind she turned 18 the year before. She put in again for youth allowance. And both myself and my ex-partner filled out all the relevant documentation as to why she couldn't live at home, all the paperwork. I took it into my office. I filled out the forms at my office. I handed over the counter. At that time, we were told there was a deadline for that particular day to have it uploaded by a set time. I was told it would be, and it turned out it went in the bin. So the reason that my daughter was given that she was denied access to Centrelink youth allowance in October 2019 was that she failed to upload the necessary documentation. Oddly enough, I did the right thing. I took photos of that documentation on the day before I lodged it at Centrelink to prove that I'd filled it all out. And that documentation even gets rather personal for the parent, like wanting to know the last time I had a relationship with somebody and the last time I had sexual relations with somebody. It's ridiculous, the paperwork that you have to put in, and wanting to know when was the last time that I had a relationship with another person. And then shockingly, when I said to the Centrelink staff woman, I gave her the date that my ex and I separated, she adjusted it to suit herself by another 3 months, which I disagreed with. Right. So between October 2019 and April 2020, my daughter was having to couch surf and rely on the generosity of friends for living in Brisbane. She was vulnerable and at risk, and this is what happens to our youth in this situation. having to live off the generosity of friends, strangers, and God knows what. And also, you know, me doing whatever I could, which was also financially stressing me, and her father doing what he could, and he lives in another state. So COVID hits, and all of a sudden, or, you know, April 2020, I get notification that I have to move from my 2-bedroom unit to a 1-bedroom unit. I don't have a choice. The orders have come from above. This is what I was told. And that I was no longer eligible for my 2-bedroom unit because my daughter wasn't living with me. And so I had to go to the 1-bedroom unit. And on the lease, it was clearly stated I was not allowed to have another person reside with me at all. It is on my lease. So this leaves me with the situation of my daughter could not come home in an emergency anyways because she's not allowed to live here, right? So all of a sudden, my daughter gets granted youth allowance dependent rate. Now, the base rate for that, what prior to this little increase, was $309 a fortnight and no rent assistance. Where she was, the friend that she was staying with, she was able to start contributing towards rent. And her share of the rent was $265 a fortnight, or whatever she was putting in, right? But she couldn't get rent assistance. And so for the next, from April onwards, up until about 2 months ago, she was bumbling along and she couldn't get independent rate because she's under 22. So she ends up having to move 2 months ago into a shared accommodation in the city in Brisbane. She got a room with a 6-month signed dated lease, which if she was on the base rate of $309, her starting rent was $300 a fortnight, leaving her $9 a fortnight to live on. So she applied to the Department for Independent Living Rate so that she could get rent assistance, because one of the things they kept telling her was she had to be on a lease. Well, now she's on a lease. So they first came back to me and said, oh, but no, she needs to come and live with you because, you know, you need to look after her until she's 25. With a bit of fighting and a bit of help, I contacted Larissa Waters' office to help us out because she can't come here. Now, I went into Centrelink with my lease to prove that she was not allowed to live here, and that's an adequate reason for her not to, for her to be able to have independent rate, which is $462.50 plus $93.80 rent assistance. Right, it's gone up now to $512.50 with the $50 increase and $93.80 rent assistance. So after a lot of toing and froing and a bit of a fight, they decided to give her living away from home allowance, which is a special payment because of her circumstances, because her circumstances don't fit for an under 22 to be living away from home independent payment. For that to happen, there has to be a complete breakdown of the relationship between myself and my daughter. We have to show that we've been to counselling and mediation, and it's just no way that we can live together. That's not the case here. She cannot live here. There is no room here. She's not allowed to live here. It's a breach of my lease and my tenancy if she does live here, and I live in community housing. That's the government has put that rule down, not me, right? Plus, bringing her to live up here with me would put her in an area with a higher youth unemployment and less chance of getting employment, which means that she would probably get cut off her payment anyway. And they know damn well that I'm on a single disability support pension, and yet the comment was made to me that I'm supposed to be paying her rent as well as mine, right? In Centrelink, when we were sorting this out, it was expected of me to be paying all of her expenses as well as mine on my single disability support pension. It was also expected by one of the staff members that she should have her own computer and printer and should just be able to print things out. And she's also expected to have a car and this, that, and all the other, and they've got no idea, right? And I got told by one lady, oh, your daughter needs to take responsibility. I said, what? For a staff member here not uploading the documentation that meant that she didn't get paid her payments at all, right? Back in October 2019, how can you put that back on the kid and say that she's responsible, right? So we got through everything. They started hassling her, telling her she needed all this stuff. She was getting stressed and upset. She made me correspondence nominee. So I rang the department that was handling this, and I got to speak to a lovely lady who not only calmed me down, but was able to cut through all the bullshit. And while we were actually on the phone, my daughter was in message with me on Facebook. Her independent rate was granted along with her rent assistance. So that's fantastic. She gets one payment of living away from home allowance with rent assistance, and then she's changed to her independent rate. And so that happened. That was great. We thought, good, it's sorted. Within 48 hours, she was called for a review. They sent her out all the documentation that she needed to provide. And they asked her to bring in all of the paperwork that they asked for, rent certificate, lease agreement, whatever paperwork that they required. She did that. She went in. Last fortnight, she wasn't paid rent assistance. She just got the $512, which is the increase, the new rate for independent rate youth allowance for under 22s. And but she didn't get her rent assistance. So I said to her, phone them. So she tried phoning all last week, she just couldn't get through, and she ran out of credit this week. That's what happens when you're broke. You just can't afford to have credit on hand all the time. Right? And she hasn't got any data, so she's relying on the internet at the house to be able to contact me through Facebook. So I went into Centrelink, where I live, as her nominee. I was able to find out what was going on. And it turns out that the person who had done her review wasn't working yesterday, but hadn't completed the review that was done 3 weeks ago. So therefore had cut off her rent assistance, hadn't completed the review. And the lady in the Centrelink office says to me, what scholarship is your daughter doing? And I'm like, news to me. She doesn't have a scholarship. Oh, what university is she going to? News to me. I'm speaking to my daughter. It's news to her as well. So now we sort that out. I get her rent assistance sorted out for her yesterday. They organised for back payment of the rent assistance that's been missed, and for her rent assistance of $93.87 to kick in normally once that back pay goes through. And that should happen this week. That's cool. Thank you. That's what we needed. The lady did her best to find all the information, even though she was having to dig around all over the place because the other person hadn't completed the review or put in the information where it was easy to find. And the lady from my office here had to ring another lady, and between the two of them, they thought they got it sorted out. My daughter gets a phone call this morning from the department. Please provide the documentation for the scholarship that doesn't exist. So here we are again. The department is asking my daughter for documentation that doesn't exist. The last time they did this, they denied her claim. So now my daughter is scared that she's now going to be cut off her independent youth allowance or youth allowance altogether because she doesn't have a scholarship and she's not at university. She is a job seeker, and her priority is meeting her mutual obligations, considering she has some quite severe health issues of her own that are personal that she also has to get through. And until she can get financially stable on her budget, she can't afford to go and see a specialist to get a diagnosis sorted out. And she's got to try and get a Centrelink medical sorted out so that they can take her off Stream A, so that Serena Rosso don't destroy her mental health in the process and destroy this kid along the way through. So it's becoming very much like, why is this so hard? And why every time we put the phone down, or I come back from a Centrelink office and we've resolved an issue and we're thinking, good, she can now sit down, relax a little bit, work out her budget for her bills, you know, her rent, her go-card, her phone credit, her bills, her food, and work on trying to get a job and fulfill her mutual obligations, etc., etc., etc. And then we get the phone call again asking for documentation that doesn't exist. Is my daughter being targeted, right, due to the fact that I am doing this campaign against the cashless debit card, and I stand up against the LNP and One Nation government in regards to what they're doing to the people of this country that can't get a job or disabled or whatever? That is my question. Parents out there with adult kids, how hard has it been for under 22 to be able to obtain their independent status so that they could pay rent? Because they're doing this to a lot of kids. They're denying them the independent rate, keeping them on the base rate, but they can't live at home. And if they, you know, my daughter's got lots of barriers to coming up this way. No jobs. High youth unemployment would mean that she's moving to an area that's worse off. No job prospects, right? Definitely no job prospects in her field that she's got a diploma in, right? And the fact that where would she live? Because she's not allowed to live on my premises. It's a breach of my terms and conditions under community housing contract. So, yeah, this is the question. I don't normally bring any of my personal stuff to this page, ever. I never have, right? It's just getting beyond a joke that we think, right, we've got things sorted, and all of a sudden, within 24 hours, they're on the phone again. Now, today, I've actually rang Anthony Chisholm's office and informed their staff, given my daughter the details there, for their staff to be able to pick up the ball as well and find out what's going on. They're going to ring me back when they find out some more details. And I'll go back to Larissa Waters' office as well and let them know what's going on. Because my daughter has been well and truly screwed over since she turned 18 by the department denying her access to youth allowance all the way along, stuffing it up in October 2019, then only putting her on the base rate in 2020, right? And the only thing that saved this kid's butt was the COVID supplement payment, because she would have starved without it. Literally starved without it, because there's only so much of my DSP pension that I can send her to help her pay for her meds and her puffers, because she's a chronic asthmatic, right? Or when she needed money for go-card to get to Centrelink or do something, you know, or I'm hungry, can you send me some money, right? You've got no there would be parents out there in my position who just couldn't. How powerless you feel, how stressed you feel when your kid is begging you for some money to get some food because they're hungry, but they've got no damn payment. They did that to my daughter for 18 months. They left my daughter couch surfing, right, and homeless and at risk and vulnerable in Brisbane for 18 months. That leaves kids, and I said this to Centrelink officers in the past, this leaves our youth at risk of being targeted by organised crime. You want to know why you've got a percentage of youth that commit crime? Because they're not being supported by our government. The parents can't support them anymore. The family payments have ended, right? And the kids are on the street starving. I'm lucky my kid didn't take the criminal route, but there's a lot of kids there that get offered cash to go and do jobs. When a kid's hungry, 18, 19, 20 years of age, you know, you're setting them up to fail. And I've been lucky that my daughter's had friends that have put up with having to have her there and not be able to pay rent and feed her and stuff like that. But there's been times when they haven't been able to feed her. There's been times when she's been stuck somewhere and I haven't been able to help her. And I'm 4 hours from her. And once I have to be able to pay my own bills and pay my rent on a single disability support pension. And I've busted my ass as a parent. Even when my daughter's mental health was in the toilet and she hated my guts because the world was just destroying her, right? I did what I could. to stick by her, and she's come out the other end. And I got my daughter back in the mental sense and that. But now the department's putting more pressure. And I want to know why. And is this normal? And is what other parents are going through? Or is this just a coincidence that the only time my daughter gets granted her youth allowance dependent rate is when they move me to a 1-bedroom unit? So she's got nowhere to come in an emergency, but she wasn't able to be able to be signed up onto a lease on a $309 a fortnight payment. No landlord would allow her to sign a lease. No real estate would look at her because she had she didn't have enough income and she didn't qualify for rent assistance. It's only because we fought in the last 2 months and she was lucky to get on a signed lease with the place that she's with. And now it's, as soon as we got it sorted, it's within 48 hours, we're doing a random review. Random my ass. You know what I mean? I'm sorry, but random my ass. And it's just ridiculous what they're doing to our kids. But is my daughter being targeted unnecessarily? I mean, I just got the rent assistance sorted out yesterday. As soon as she got that granted and sorted out, they're on the phone again today. Asking for paperwork that doesn't exist. Still reassessing her review. Why? What's taking so long? Why the big review of this kid's independent status? She's independent. She needs to be able to pay rent. She needs access to rent assistance. It's not a lot of money, right? When you look at it critically, she's getting $512.50 a fortnight, of which $340 of it is rent. Then she's got her electricity and her internet on top, and then she's supposed to be able to get a go card for travel because there's no way she can be able to afford to get a driver's license. God knows how many years that's going to take, hey? You know what I mean? If she can't get any work, can't get a job, and job agencies aren't interested in helping our kids get driver's licenses when it costs over $1,000 now to do such things, right? Yeah, I'm stumped. Tell me what you think. This is the first time I've come public about, I've spoken about some of this stuff on my own page in the past, but this is the first time I've come and I've put it here to you guys because I'm starting to feel like they're picking on her because of what I'm doing, right? They made her starve, they made her live on the streets, they made her do, I don't know how she bloody survived. Right? I know she's not the kid that left home to go and study the diploma that she did get. She's nothing like that kid. But then again, School of Hard Knocks has probably knocked that personality out of her sideways. Do you know what I mean? She's been through a lot, I know. But did she have to go through it all? Why couldn't she just transition onto youth allowance dependent rate when she was 18? Instead of being denied and screwed around until she was 19 and a half, and I think it was only done because of COVID. It suddenly just happened, but it was only dependent rate. So, yeah. I'm sure there's more dramas to come because guess which job agency she got nominated to once she moved to the city? Serena Rosso, Stream A, the most intense job search there is, and now there's talk about trying to help her to change that, and we'll see how much pressure they put on her. She's already had a meeting with a caseworker with them, and she said so far things are good. We'll see. But this crap with the department ringing her up all the time, wanting more and more and more documentation. When does it end? And asking for stuff that doesn't exist when they've already been told. She said to me, she was already interviewed at the review about what scholarship, what university, and she told them then and there she doesn't have a scholarship. She doesn't go to university. She's a job seeker, right? But this is obviously an ongoing thing, and now they're complaining that she hasn't uploaded the relevant documentation, so that gives me the feeling they are trying to do anything they can to cancel her payment. And as a mother, I want some reassurances that that's not going to happen. So I have put this in the hands of Senator Anthony Chisholm's office, and I've also put it in the hands of Larissa Waters' office from the Greens, because, yeah, this is just crap. Do you know what I mean? And the only reason why I'm able to assist my daughter with doing this is because she has nominated me as a correspondence nominee, right? Which she did with the last fight to get her independent rate. Because if she, up until that point, if I went in and said, what the hell are you doing? They go, we can't talk to you. So we had to find a way for me to be able to talk to them. Otherwise, she would have been more up shit creek. Because if they hadn't changed her to, she'd just signed a 6-month lease. Her dad helped her pay a bond. She's paid a bond. She's paid 2 weeks rent in advance. She's done everything right, responsible. But if they hadn't allowed her to get to this independent rate, she'd be homeless right now. And they don't care, because my lease states that she can't come here. And it's not in her best interest to come here. Down there, she has her doctors. Down there, she has the better chance of getting a job, right? And she's young enough that she could get a job in the city. Up here, there's no job prospects for her, and there's no proper medical services. We know, we lived 8 years in Harvey Bay, right? If she could have got better services there, maybe things may have been different now with what she needs to deal with in the future with her health. But I couldn't afford to pay private for what she needed. And we couldn't get it on the public, not good enough. And the government kept cutting the funding. It makes me wonder, you know, so I'm interested, have other parents been put through this? Have other kids been knocked back continuously, asked for documentation that doesn't even exist, and then been told, well, you didn't upload the documentation, so your claim was cancelled? All right? Let me know. All right, guys, I'll talk to you later. See ya.